if I think about, well, what is success to me? Success to me is simply going to bed at night, looking forward to getting up in the morning.
In this episode of Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness, host Jonathan Satovsky engages with financial expert Steve Sanduski to explore the evolving landscape of financial advice.
Welcome. This is Jonathan Satovsky of Satovsky Asset Management, and this is an exciting day today. I am so blessed to have Steve Sanduski as our guest. The podcast we like to talk about is Wisdom, Wealth, and Wellness, and this guy checks all the boxes. Steve has had over 35 years of experience, renowned financial expert and thought leader in the field, impressive background, just amazing. He's worked in Silicon Valley for Hewlett-Packard during the pre-internet era, helped launch an RIA, achieve remarkable growth, going from zero to 1.8 billion in assets in under 6 years. He served as managing partner of Peak Advisor Alliance, now Carson Group Coaching, for 11 years, overseeing expansion from 0 to 1,000 financial advisors, coaching financial advisors as clients. And additionally, he's the co-founder and CEO of ROL Advisor, a digital tool and training company that supports financial advisors across 11 countries. And now he's on the next chapter of his journey. So welcome, Steve.
John, it's been great to be here. Appreciate it.
So we've had the good fortune of meeting many years ago. And I've always been impressed with your enthusiasm for everything you do. Enthusiasm for the field of financial planning, enthusiasm for advocacy for financial advisors. And recently you talked about the idea of being a bull market for advice. I'd love it. Maybe we could just start there and tell us what you're up to and why are you so enthusiastic about this next chapter?
Yeah, well, someone had talked about how it's a bull market for advice. And I thought, yeah, that is pretty interesting. And the way I think about that is I've been in this profession since 1993, which is really pre-internet days. And so before then, I remember, well, in fact, I bought my first stock back in the late 1970s. And back then I had to wait until the paper came the next morning to look up in the stock tables to see the price of my stock, whether it went up or down.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, obviously things have changed. The internet comes along. So today, because of technology, there are so many ways for people to get advice, to get information. Not all of it's good, of course, if you're just looking up stuff online. But yeah, I think it's a bull market for advice from the standpoint that there are so many ways for people to get access to it that could be inexpensive. And but then when we're talking the serious money, you want to make sure that you're working with a financial professional who is well schooled and knowledgeable about your particular situation that can work with you one-on-one to help you achieve what it is you're trying to achieve.
But the enthusiasm you've had for this field, as you said, you got excited about buying a stock, you got into the field, started getting involved, and you are working directly with clients, and you've transitioned your role to coaching advisors who are working directly with clients. So I'd love for you to talk about sort of the essence or the fiber of what you see as good advice and good stewardship, and why you are so enthusiastic about coaching advisors versus working directly with clients. Or maybe you're still excited about working with clients, but you think you can impact more lives perhaps by touching the advisors' lives.
Well, the thing about advice is that it can't be generic. If it's just generic, then it's just information. And we've got artificial intelligence today that you can ask it a question and it can spit back some information that may or may not be useful to you given your personal situation. So as I think about what a financial professional does, like you, John, is you really understand your clients, you ask questions, you get to know them at a personal level and what they're trying to accomplish. So as I think about the work that I do, what I get excited about is the business of the business, so to speak here. And I like working with financial advisors because of the impact. So if I work with one advisor and I'm able to help them make a bigger impact in their clients' lives, if I help them run a more a more effective practice from the standpoint that they can provide higher quality advice, Maybe they can provide additional services. They can provide additional support. They can hire higher quality people who can do a better job working with their clients. So to me, the ability to impact more people by working with advisors who themselves work with 50, 100, 200 people, I think the impact can be greater. And that certainly gets me excited.
That's, it's admirable. And I know for me, I'm lucky to have stumbled into you. And I know that anyone that's worked with you would feel lucky to have had the benefit of your years of wisdom and experience to understand that the influence and the impact you can have if they're open-minded to create something that they never dreamed was possible. So it's kudos to you. You had an interview that I was listening to with Kevin Kelly about, you talked about billionaires, what they do with their time and wealth as a rule of thumb to predict what the rest of us will eventually do. I'm curious, what do you see trending in this area as far as activities or priorities in life?
Yeah, it was a really fun conversation because Kevin Kelly is a guy, he's in his 70s. He's been around for decades. He's very prominent in Silicon Valley, and he's worked with a lot of billionaires. And so he and I were having a conversation about the future and trying to understand some of the trends and what's happening. And like you mentioned there, what he said was, he said his rule of thumb is he looks at what billionaires are doing today, and that helps him think about what might be evolving in the future. And his thinking is that if you're a billionaire, money is essentially free, meaning you can buy anything that you want and you can't spend your money fast enough. So when money is no longer an issue, what are you going to spend your time on? And there were 2 or 3 things that came out of that I'll share here that I thought were interesting. One is he said that billionaires are always surrounded by people, whether it's their bodyguards, whether it's their chauffeurs, whether it's their nannies, whether it's their business people that are their advisors. They're always around people. Now, part of that is because they've got a lot of money, their targets and that sort of thing. But he said he thinks the other part is that they still want to be part of a community. I mean, they're human like the rest of us in that they want to have good connective relationships. So I thought that was an interesting thing. They're in a community, they're around people. A second thing he said was they tend to have multiple homes, which is probably not surprising that if you've got that kind of money, you may have multiple homes. But what I took away from that was not so much that it was necessarily about a materialistic view as it was a sense of place, that if you have all this money, you can live anywhere. You want to find places that you feel rooted to, that you feel connected to, that you feel safe and comfortable to. So I sort of view it that way, that it's about travel, it's about place, it's about feeling comfortable in that particular place. And then I'd say the third thing is many of them are still working. And I don't think of work as a 4-letter word. And I personally don't ever envision that I will retire in the traditional sense. I mean, as long as I've got my faculties, as long as I've got my health, I want to continue to be engaged and productive. So if you look at these billionaires, many of them are still working. And when I say work, I don't just mean they get paid for it. It could be philanthropy. And of course, many of these billionaires are major philanthropists. So they spend a lot of time thinking about how they want to give their money away, what can have the biggest impact. So I'd say those are three things that I picked up in talking to Kevin.
So how it affects the rest of us, I'm hypothesizing, just trying to extract, what I heard from you. Sense of community. You want to be able to find a place of belonging, a culture of belonging, which enables multiple locations. I always think, I've been studying a little bit about the blue zones, the concept of, octogenarians live in 100. So there's some common threads. And I think it probably parallels the billionaires of looking for a place they can feel healthy in mountains, near water, even where you live, which is a beautiful spot in Lake Michigan. So, that nature and that beauty helps you feel like a sense of calm and joy and youthful enthusiasm. And then and that third thing about being engaged in work or philanthropy, something meaningful where you feel like you can give back. And I think similar to you, my an uncle of mine, does work for coaching in an organization called SCORE. And he, at the end of every session, he's like, you know what? Thank you. He's thanking the people for the opportunity to serve them because it gives him such meaning and fulfillment. You know, it's such a beautiful thing. So I think that's a great takeaway, to have people understand the idea of shaping your lives and maybe even visualizing taking money off the table, because it's much different working with someone young. I think the 20 to 50-year-old crowd that starts getting in the sandwich situation, taking care of young kids and older adults, gets into a lot of stressful juggling, a lot of hats, and they're not thinking about giving back as much as they're thinking about survival. So, you know, that stress continuum is something maybe I'd be interested to see how you addressed personally and or professionally, or how you coach people into getting over that hump of the stress continuum when people aren't quite as relaxed where that money is off the table, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think you summarized it well. And one of the things you just mentioned here was about youth. And that's another thing that I would mention if I think about the billionaires or just older people in general, is don't just hang around other older people. You want to hang around people that are 1 or 2 generations or 3 generations younger than you are, because being around the young people is going to help you feel young. It's going to help you continue to be engaged. It's going to help you understand what's happening today as opposed to what was happening 40 years ago when you were younger, and just staying stuck in that paradigm of when you were growing up. So I think it's also important for us to continue to surround ourselves with younger people, multiple generations of people that will help us keep us sharp and help us keep our thinking moving forward as well.
And how this is a personal, selfish question, but I guess I would ask a selfish question of is there an analogy to the maturation in human life, you know, like a child, teen, you know, young adult, you know, like there's phases of life. Do you find the same phases of life? This is a little, the evolution of an advisory practice where they become an adolescent and then they become a grown up, you know, the evolution of a business, or you say an advisory practice, you know, how that form takes shape of people sort of getting into their comfort zone or filling into their shoes of what that vision initially looked like and how it evolves based on someone's lifestyle design, I suppose, in the same billionaire fashion.
Yeah, I would say that everyone rises to the level of their comfort zone. And what I mean by that is, and this could apply to a financial advisor, this could apply to anybody that works, so to speak. And what I mean by that is that when we're starting off in our career, we have to work hard, we have to struggle, we're learning, we have obstacles that we have to overcome. And so we're struggling until we reach a point where we're like, I can take a breath. I feel a little more comfortable. I've got some predictability. Things are okay. I'm not working 80 hours a week anymore. And if we think about financial advisors, I see that happen often where they start their career, they work. They get to a point where things are fairly comfortable. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to go try to just more maintain right now and just live life, so to speak. And then you have a smaller percentage of advisors who say, no, I want to keep going. And for some of them, it may be because, hey, I want to make more money. But I'd say for more of them, it's about the impact. In fact, I have an advisor that comes to mind, very, very successful advisor, has billions of dollars that he's managing, but he's still working hard. And the reason is it's about impact. And so he says, we want to continue to grow because our mission is to generate impact. And the more that we can grow, the more we can impact the lives of more people, the more we can impact the lives of our team members, the more we can impact our community. And so to him, growth is synonymous with impact. So he's found a reason to continue to work long past the point of him being comfortable and his partners being comfortable as well. So yeah, I think it's important for us to have a reason that gets us out of bed in the morning. And I like to say,
why, like the Simon Sinek's why, right? The why.
it is, yeah. And the way that I think about it is, if I think about, well, what is success to me? Success to me is simply going to bed at night, looking forward to getting up in the morning. So
enthusiastically charging forward the next day, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So to me, that's what success is. And as long as I'm doing that, I know that I'm on the right path.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm curious, as just speaking a little inside baseball for anybody that might listen to this that's actually an advisor in the field of advisory, in the advisory profession. There's been a tremendous amount of M&A because of the desire of some advisors to be able to create a national or a global presence, right? Offices are all around the world. I've traveled recently and I was like, oh man, this could be cool. I could have an office in Athens. I could have an office in Dublin. I could have an office in, like this would be amazing. I get to travel. I get to meet people all around the world. This could be really fun, So I'm curious as to if you have any thoughts about how the culture and the energy of businesses change as they evolve, advisory businesses or the M&A, how that is been positive and constructive, both for that greater impact and or the industry as a whole, for the ability to mentor and develop people, for the ability to be able to have a greater impact on more lives, whether you think that's a positive thing. The bull market for advice has led to a bull market for advisory, the appetite for advisory firms, as you know. So I'm curious as to if you have any inside baseball thoughts about that trend and at this moment in time.
Yeah, I'd say it's neutral. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's an option. And so there are advisors who say, hey, I want to be part of a larger organization. I don't want to be on my own anymore. I don't want to have to deal with all the things I have to deal with about being a business owner. And for them, that's a great option. And for the people that do get into the mergers and acquisitions business, so the leaders of those firms, oftentimes, as you know, they'll take on outside capital. So they'll get private equity investors and take on additional money. Now, all of a sudden, you've lost that control. So if I'm running this firm and I'm taking some private equity money, now all of a sudden I got another board that I've got to deal with. I've got investors who are looking for a return over the next 5 to 7 years. And we're already seeing this. Again, as you know, that we've seen some of these firms are on their second and in some cases their third round of being turned over with a private equity investor. And it's like, now it's about the money. Okay.
Well, it's funny. I just want to interject for a second on something you said just earlier. You're like, what? If I want to wake up every morning fired up about the day. So I would analogize that, and this goes back to something I learned from you a long time ago. I think you put out, I don't remember whether there was 1 or 3 words every year, but my 3 words that you put out, you have 1. So I picked 3 because I'm a simpleton. My 3 words are, oh, you got 3 also. Okay. Yeah. 3. Mine's learning, growth, and fun. If it's not learning, growth, and fun, I'm not doing it. So I want to just tie this together to M&A. This is just a thought that crossed my mind because I was at a conference and I saw these CEOs of major global firms, that are growing and taking all this private equity money. And their facial expressions were like, this is why we want to be big and successful just like us. And I'm like, I don't see one of these guys smiling. Not one of them. I haven't even seen them crack a smile. Right. So I don't know what they're doing in their lives, but I don't want to trade what I'm doing for they're doing. Like, not interested. No thanks.
Right.
Like optimize for joy. Come on. That's what you teach your clients. So put yourself in the position of being the client. And I think I've really given a lot of thought to this about, the evolution of advice and the evolution of planning. Is my friends said very wisely that it's easy to be Einstein for others and Mr. Magoo for themselves, Mm-hmm. So anyway, I didn't mean to interject your idea about the M&A and the evolution of the business, but I was just thinking about your words. Maybe you could remind me about what your words are this year and how you reenact that every year, because that's a cool process for anyone, whether they're an advisor or any stage of life. I think it's a beautiful swing thought for someone going through their year with enthusiasm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So this was not an idea that I invented. I discovered this from another gentleman, 9 years ago now. So for the past 8 or 9 years, I've started each year with 3 words. And these are 3 words that are reminders to me of how I want to go about living that year. So there's sort of like trigger words of like, okay, and I look at it. So I literally, I got a piece of paper right here that each day I write down sort of my to-do list. These are the things I'm going to do. I put the time that I want to do those. And then at the top of that sheet, I've got my 3 words, I've got my core values. And so that stays right on my desk the whole day. So my 3 words for this year are wind, wayfind, and sense. Now that's kind of weird because this year, my wife and I decided we're going to learn how to sail. And so wind, wayfind, and sense is my reminder about wind. And I think about wind in all the nuance of that, in the sense that we don't see it, but we can feel it. Wind can be a tornado and destructive. It can be a hurricane and destructive, or it can be a nice cool breeze on a hot summer day. So it can be, productive or destructive. And so I think of wind as my reminder of sailing. Like, to be a good sailor, I've got to understand all the nuance and be able to feel the wind and see the direction of the wind to become a good sailor. The second word is wayfind. We took a sailing trip to the British Virgin Islands late last year, and I really got into this idea of natural navigation, meaning not using instruments to find my way. And I mean, I could tell you a long story later, but the general idea is simply, how can I navigate without all of today's modern technology? And so this year is about trying to learn more about reading the stars, about reading the environment around me and what clues that's leaving for me in terms of direction. So wayfind is another key word. And then the third one is sense, S-E-N-S-E, which is all about, I live in my head a lot. So a lot of my work is intellectual work. So sense to me is just trying to be more in my body, more about feeling, more about embodiment. And so I have, I got back on yoga again. So I've been on and off yoga, hot yoga for 20 years. I exercise all the time, and I've been doing that for decades, but it's just more about being purposeful and intentional about trying to sense how I'm feeling, what my body's telling me, the signals, and being better at interpreting those signals from the body and living my life in a way that is more in tune with how I'm feeling.
I love that. I love that. And that can be applied not just to your sailing, but that could be applied to your coaching business, or to an advisor, or someone that's doing planning, or even a client can take that in their life and say, am I doing things that is letting the wind get to my back? Am I using my senses and my instincts to be able to feel a way to navigate the situations I get myself in, good or bad, And I actually just learned today about senses this morning, that the sense of smell, the olfactory, is the most spiritual of senses. I didn't know that till today.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
And it's really fascinating because, I guess you pick it up most acutely when you walk into a spa. You have the sense and the smell of a spa, and you're just like, ooh, okay, now I'm in a different frame of mind immediately. Or someone burning incense, it's kind of amazing. So that's a beautiful thing. So how can we apply that, or how can I or a listener apply that as again, I know you asked, like, who's the audience? Who's going to listen to this? I don't know. My vision was I try to meet good people, again, learn have some good conversations. And whether it's my teammates that I've been fortunate to work with, whether it's people in the industry that I collaborate with, whether it's clients, you never know who's going to listen. That one thing like the Emerson quote, if you can, impact one child, you've changed the trajectory of people's lives. So I'm curious how we can use your 3 words about navigating either the hurdles, roadblocks, or common misperceptions that people have about wealth management, about the industry, about advice, the whole field.
Yeah. So let me say this. So I think this idea of the 3 words, I think everybody should come up with their 3 words each year. And I'd love for you to tell me what your 3 words, what were those again?
Learning, growth, and fun.
Okay. So last year, instead of coming up with 3 words, I slightly tweaked it and I came up with, in my case, 4 filters. And this is going to answer your question, I hope. The idea was that when I think of the 3 words, like I mentioned, wind, wayfind, and sense are my 3 words this year. Those are trigger words that help me think about how I want to live my life this year as reminders. And then I thought, what about filters? What can I use as a framework to filter decisions that I have to make in the year ahead? And I think the words that you described, learning, for example, as I look at my 4 filters, my 4 are deep learning, content creation, flexibility, and look forward to. The idea is I get a lot of business opportunities that either come my way or that I create. And so I had to figure out, well, what am I going to say yes to and what am I going to say no to? And so I thought, well, let me create a series of filters and I'm going to run the opportunity through the filter and see what it says. And in order to say yes to the opportunity, I have to say yes to all 4 filters. So for example, I have an opportunity. And does this opportunity enable me to do deep learning? Because learning is one of my core values. Okay. If I can't learn something from it, I'm not interested. Second is content creation. I love to create. I love podcasts. I love writing. I love video. So if I can't create some content from it, I'm not interested. Flexibility. I love having the flexibility to go sailing if I want to, or set my own schedule. If I can't be flexible with it, I'm not interested. And then the last one, look forward to. I mentioned that my definition of success is going to bed at night, looking forward to getting up in the morning. So if I see that this opportunity is on my schedule that day, am I going to look forward to it? So I've had a lot of things that check the first 3 boxes, but when I looked at the 4th box, which was, am I going to look forward to doing this? The answer was no. And so it's an easy no. So I think taking the idea of the 3 words and then having 3 or 4 filters is a great combination that everybody can use.
I'm going to steal, or let's say I'm going to adopt. I'll use a more gentle word. I'm going to adopt those 4 filters, and I actually feel immensely appreciative that you're able to spend a half an hour with me today, and I fit through those 4 filters to learn. And
Absolutely.
hopefully something that you were looking forward to that you can flexibly sail today and enjoy yourself. That's awesome. I really am. I think that's a very wise way to approach things. It also, I think, I'm just thinking about myself a minute. I know most people are very self-absorbed in their thinking. I remember Dan Ariely, I just heard speak about the idea of the hidden forces that shape our lives. And we don't know the system design architecture that causes us to not be able to calm our mind. As you said, you've been doing yoga to calm your mind, to be able to see those filters more clearly. Sometimes when you're not in a calm and a relaxed state yourself, you can't see the hidden forces that are making us make irrational decisions that aren't in our own best interest, So yeah. I guess I'll leave with, I just want to, go ahead.
I was just going to touch on this idea of these hidden forces. What I think of that is our lives are defined by structure. And some of those structures are very visible and some of those structures are invisible. And so if you think about the path that a river takes through its course, it's going to follow the riverbed. And so it's going to follow that path of least resistance. So if you look at your life and you say, gosh, my life isn't working the way I want it to, or you think about your company and you're like, my business isn't working the way that I want it to. I would ask you to go back and think about the embedded structures in your life, the embedded structures in your business, because each of us are going to follow that path of least resistance. And so whatever that channel is that we've created, it can either be a groove, meaning, man, we're just sliding right through that groove and everything is perfect in harmony, or it can be a rut where it's this deep rut and we can't get out of it. And so think about the structure. And if you want to change the path you're on, change the structure that you're in.
I love that. It reminds me of a visual in Ray Dalio's cartoon book, Principles, where he shows a guy going down a boat, down a river, and there's like 1,000 iterative channels and paths he can go. And you can't stop the river. You just keep going. And you pick a channel and you're down that panel. You're like, oh shoot, I'm at a dead end. I gotta go. I gotta go to a new channel. You just keep going. You just keep navigating. We're running out of time, and I just want to end with one maybe takeaway. I mean, you've given just so many pearls of wisdom that I know I do, even though I don't speak to you as frequently. I have extracted a tremendous amount of knowledge from you, not just in this conversation, but in just gleaning your presence and the way you show up in the world the last 20, 30 years. So I know I thank you, but I'd be interested, two last things. One, how do people find you if they want to seek you out? Social media, website, where can people find you? And then any other thoughts that you want to share about habits that you've designed that maybe got you through that rut, that, maybe, as you said, that sometimes people get stuck in a rut and sometimes they need to step back and find a new route, So I'm just maybe a good way to tie this together,
Yeah. So in terms of connecting with me, I've got a website, and you can find me at stevesanduski.com. That's STEVESANDUSKI.com. And then every couple of weeks or so, I put out an email letter. It's called GTK, and that stands for Good to Know. And while it is good to know, I read it every week. It's awesome. Yep. Yep. So while it might technically be designed for advisors, I think oftentimes there's some nuggets in there that would certainly be applicable to just about anybody. In terms of a final thought, let me leave you with this. And it was really inspired from a movie that is very meaningful to my wife and I. It's called Somewhere in Time. And I don't know if you remember it or not, but it goes back several decades. And Christopher Reeve was in it, and as well as Jane Seymour. And it was a movie about time travel, essentially, and a love story. And so, the gist of it is simply that Christopher Reeve, the character, Richard Collier, he was living in the present, which was like 1979 in this movie. He wanted to go back in time 62 years to reunite with the love of his life. And so he discovered that the way to go back in time was to essentially will himself back in time. But he had to put himself in an environment that was just like 1910 or 1912, whatever year it was that he went back to. So he went to an old hotel that was around 1912. He went and bought some old clothes that were from around 1912. And he took everything out. He went to a hotel room. He took everything out that would have been indicative of the current time. So he basically, goes into a deep state. He goes back into time. He reunites with Jane Seymour. They're in love. They get married. Everything's wonderful. And then they were having a conversation, and she was making fun of his period clothes. And she said, well, that's like 10 years too old from today. And he says, oh, no, this is great. Well, then all of a sudden he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out a penny. And then the camera zooms in on the penny, and the penny says 1979. And so then what happened was he was out of 1912 because he pulled out a current time penny. And you can see the image zooms out like this vortex, and he's being sucked back to today and gets out of that state. And then the movie ends very shortly thereafter, where he's essentially lamenting that he got taken out. Now, my point in telling that long-winded story is to think about, what are the pennies in your pocket? What are those things that are keeping you stuck in a way of thinking, stuck in a problem, or that are causing difficulties in your life? And so get rid of the pennies in your life that are causing those things, or even better, find a way to not get those pennies in your life to begin with. So I would just leave you with that idea of, what are the pennies in your life? How can you either get rid of them, or how can you make sure that they don't enter your life in the first place?
That's brilliant. Steve, it's just been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for letting me get through the 4 filters and spending the time with me today. And I look forward to watching and witnessing your next chapter and the impact and influence you have for the next 25 years ahead. And I'd love to see a picture of the sailing. Maybe I could live vicariously through you, because I admire everything that you do. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And I look forward to our next conversation.
You got it.
Satovsky Asset Management, hyper-personalized wealth management that has created joy and abundance since 2007.